it's so important that we intentionally place ourselves in environments that will cause us to thrive. I often find that at times I really want to share something with you, a risk that I want to take, something that I find really important to me, but I find myself worrying about your response. I'm afraid of feeling rejected or judged or being thought of as not good enough.
I think she's in a paralysis state. Like, she just doesn't even want to walk. We place pressure on other people to give us things that we don't even know what we need.
And the things that we can't even give ourselves.
Exactly, yeah. What is it that she needs? Can she articulate it to herself first? Our next dilemma comes in from a lady in her 40s who says, I have self-confidence issues that hold me back in following my dreams. I tend to have imposter syndrome in everything I do. I always feel that people will judge my choices and behaviours negatively, and I think and talk very negatively about myself. For example, I love gardening and I would love to design outdoor spaces for people, but I'm worried they may think I'm not qualified enough. I also worry that my family and friends might not think this is intellectual enough, or that I don't have enough ambition. My lack of self-confidence and my imposter syndrome are holding me back. What can I do? What are you thinking, Bea?
Well, I'm thinking a couple of things. There is the imposter syndrome there. There is the fear of judgment and fear of being critiqued. And then there's also the personal self-talk, which seems to be very critical. And I guess a lack of trust in really knowing what she can do and how to move forward, or even knowing what she wants to do. So I think there's two major things there that I want to think about, which is her internal world, so the imposter syndrome, and also the negative self-talk, but then also this fear of judgment from other people, particularly those that are supposed to be closest to her, and she's feeling like, or she's anticipating that they will judge her really harshly. They'll think that she's not good enough, she's not ambitious enough. They would look down upon her choice of being a gardener. Which is quite sad, isn't it? It's quite sad.
Well, her environment, like what you're saying there, is it's not just her internal world that's negative. Her environment is actually quite negative.
Seems so.
Yeah. From the way she's describing it.
So I think let's start with the external world, because I think the internal world is a bigger thing to address, really. But it's so important that we intentionally place ourselves in environments that will cause us to thrive and will cause us to flourish. If we just want to take the garden example, of being in a place where, you know, the temperature is right, the soil is right, there are enough nutrients going in, there's access to shade and covering when there needs to be. And even though we can't choose our family, we definitely can choose our friends. And I think that if her perception of her family is correct, and I say if, not to be invalidating, but I think sometimes we can project and we can have assumptions about what other people may think of us because of our own internal assumptions and our own internal world. But if what she perceives is right, then she may need to think twice about, I guess, the access that she has with them, the access that they have to her, but also in terms of sharing those things that are vulnerable, that we feel quite vulnerable about, the things that are precious to us, that we're trying to protect and nurture. There are times where we actually don't place those ideas or those things in the path of people who will be really critical and will really hamper our progress. And there may be a time to share and there's a time not to share, but also being surrounded by people who may intentionally or unintentionally cause you harm, psychological harm, emotional harm, isn't great. I don't know what your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know what her living circumstances are. So, you know, as you said, I very much agree with, we can't choose our family, but we can choose our friends. So you know, if she's living with her family and she can't get away from this, and she's not, you know, in the circumstances to be getting away from it, I'd be wondering, right, how can she protect herself in that sense of, and I think it is about sharing or choosing what you share with people and choosing the right people to share the right things with, knowing where you're going to get the best support from for yourself. So if you're living with your family and, you know, that's not a situation that you're able to change, then how do you get the best out of that situation? So you're not looking to them to fill up the cup that you need filling where they're not able to fill it. So if we know that, you know, they have these ideas and ambitions for you that go against what you want for yourself, then going to them about career advice probably isn't going to be your best. No.
And before we get onto that stage, though, I'm also thinking about conversations that can be had to determine whether this is something that can change or not. And whether there is a level of transparency that needs to occur, and more vulnerability and courage to share how you feel, and to share, you know, to the people that are most important to you. You know, I often find that at times I really want to share something with you, a risk that I want to take, something that I find really important to me, but I find myself worrying about your response, and I'm afraid of feeling rejected or judged or being thought of as not good enough. And you can even extend this to also say, if you feel safe enough, because that's something that I battle with it anyway. I'm feeling that within myself. So then I also worry about other people kind of validating that fear and see what they say. See what their response is to that. And if there is a positive response, you can go further in saying, you know, when I do share X, Y, and Z with you, or when I am going through a new season in my life, I would really appreciate it if you could support me through X, Y, and Z. This is what support for me could look like. I would really appreciate that. Do you think that's something you can do? And see what they say.
I wonder if she knows what support for her looks like.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Because I know we said we were going to stay external, but sometimes we have to go a little bit internal to think about what we need from other people. Because sometimes we place pressure on other people to give us things that we don't even know what we need.
And the things that we can't even give ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So what is it that she needs? Can she articulate it to herself first? Can she start to provide bits for herself as well? So then I feel that will also give her the confidence to ask those, if those needs can be met from her family, from her friends, whoever it is in her system, in her family, friends system.
So should we go there? Should we think more about her internal world?
Yeah, because I'm thinking there's so much, as you said, there's a lot about expectations, there's a lot about judgment, which has obviously happened externally, which is now happening internally to her. And this idea of her being an imposter, like she has the capacity to think of what she values. She has the capacity to think about what brings her joy. I like gardening. I like the idea of being creative, of landscaping, of you know, bringing ideas to people's homes. You know, that in itself is a really big step. I you know, I've met some people that don't even know that yet. What is it they want to do? So I feel like the fact that she knows it is really, really positive for her. And I would want to be starting with that. You know, so you know already something about yourself, but there's this fear holding you back. You're calling it imposter syndrome. What is that?
Good question. Because this is another word that I think is kind of like a buzzword of recent. That feeling of not being good enough, that feeling of being caught out, that feeling that you're not as good as you really think you are. And that you're somehow like playing a role, and having a very narrow view of what success could look like and attributing it to external factors, achievements, And therefore, if there are a lack of those things, then you would class yourself as a failure. So that's what imposter syndrome can look like.
I think it's also this idea that you can accomplish all of these things, but in the background, you're just waiting for someone to like catch you out and say you're a fraud. You don't deserve to be here.
Yeah.
You don't deserve this. Yes, you've got all these accomplishments, but no, you're not good enough. It just does not.
Or they're not enough.
Yeah, they're not enough. It doesn't add up. And then that creates like so much self-doubt within you and can really play into this fear of failure.
Yeah.
Because you're on edge, aren't you? You're just waiting for somebody to come and snatch it away.
Pull you down.
Yeah.
And it can also stop you from actually starting in the first place, which is what is happening here. That fear of starting and getting it wrong, or perfectionism, thinking that it has to be top tier, gold standard straight away, when actually it may not look like that at the start. But does that mean she's a failure? Does that mean that she isn't successful? Does it mean that she's not good at what she does? No. So I think it's quite interesting how imposter syndrome can really show up, and there are 5 subtypes of imposter syndrome, which I think we can share.
Yeah.
Just for interest, if anyone is interested. So we have the soloist, and this is somebody who believes that in order to be viewed as successful and competent and good enough, they have to get everything done by themselves. Asking for help is a sign of weakness. So, a soloist is someone who plays an instrument by themselves, right? And that is a subtype of imposter syndrome. The fear that if you don't appear in this way or you don't behave in that way, you're seen as a fraud. Then we have the perfectionist, which we've just briefly touched on, which is the idea that if everything isn't performed to the gold standard, to the best of your abilities, again, it's failure. It equals failure. You are a fraud. You're not good enough. And that's a really hard one to get around, I think.
I think so, because I think with that one, it's you want everything to be perfect because you're so worried that people could come and pick holes in it.
Yeah.
And then say to you, see, you're not good enough. See, you missed that bit. Or look, you didn't think about this.
And this can be so all-consuming because it can stop you from starting, but also when you start, it can stop you from stopping because you have to keep having like iterations and iterations in order to make it perfect, or you have to keep going or giving more, and it can feel really, really draining.
It's really bringing me images of an octopus to mind.
Okay. Say more.
Just this idea of 8 legs, or 8 limbs, just trying to do everything at once to make sure that everything's perfect so that you don't get caught out. Yeah. I like using sea creatures or animals to visualize. Yeah, with my clients. Okay.
I find octopuses quite scary.
Do you?
Yeah. But anyway,
they're quite smart.
I know, that's what makes them very scary. They're so intelligent, and they have all these legs, and they can just anyway. Yeah. And then we have another third subtype of imposter syndrome, and this is the super person. Superman, superwoman, super person. And this is again someone who thinks that they have to get everything right. They have to be the one to do it all. Again, otherwise you are looked upon as a fraud.
I think that happens in motherhood quite a lot.
Oh,
I feel like society is pushing mothers to be super mums, and I really, really do not like that term. Again, I think I've said that twice today now. Because I feel like it sets people up for failure. Yeah. Do it all.
There's no middle ground.
No, there isn't. There isn't. I think it's focus on one thing, and you can do that, and you can have these other areas that are going on in the background, and then you focus on that. And then you focus on that. But doing everything all at once to be this superhuman, to do it perfectly, it just doesn't exist. It's going to lead to burnout, exhaustion. Yeah. it's not fair.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should be placing that on anyone. Don't think we should be placing it on ourselves.
No, definitely not.
No, it kind of happened to us, didn't it? A little bit, I think, when we were setting this up.
Say more.
Like when we were... Are you my therapist?
I was just thinking, are you going to expose us? But anyway.
No, but I guess, you know, we talked about it in our first episode about how we had this idea of setting up this podcast, and it's been like years in the making. Yeah. And I think at times maybe we got a bit held up on it has to be like this, and this, and it stopped us from progressing, didn't it? It stopped us moving forward. It stopped us even starting at times.
Yeah. It nearly stopped this episode going out because of the light coming in and out,
There you go. See, and I was just like, it's fine.
I know, I was like, it's not good enough. The light.
Sorry about the light, guys.
Yeah, apologies.
But you can still hear us. That's what matters.
Yeah. Then we have the expert subtype, and this is when an individual feels like if they don't know everything about a particular subject, or they haven't mastered every skill, or maybe they're a beginner at something, maybe aka this lady who may be starting out in this new career pathway, again, they think that they're not good enough. And the thought of having to start from the bottom and work their way up and not already have arrived and not already be the expert is a sign of weakness or a sign that they're not good enough. So in that sense, that they can feel like an imposter.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that person is basically saying, I want to have learned everything without making any mistakes.
Yeah.
But doesn't our greatest learning come from making mistakes?
It does. But it's really hard to accept that. Really hard to accept that. Particularly when you are very critical of yourself.
Yeah. But I think that maybe if we didn't place so much importance on the things we do, and we almost like said, right, this is going to be an experiment. And then if it goes great, well, great. But if it doesn't, what have I learned from it? You know, like when you write your conclusion in your research, or like when we had to write our conclusions in our research studies, like what did we learn from this experiment that we set up? What would we do next time? How would you make it better?
There's always a
way to make it better, or to learn from something, or to get something to go in a different direction. You know, I'm getting a bit of memory from Surrey and grounded theory now. As I'm saying it with good old Dora. When you're starting something new, or you're, trying something or setting something up for yourself, and you have all these experts out there that on the face of it look like they know what they're saying and doing, which they obviously do, but there has obviously been some learning and some mistakes along their journey, which is obviously not as prevalent as what we see. So that's probably feeding into her own anxieties as well.
I could say so. I could see that happening. Then we have the natural genius subtype, and this is when someone feels like they should just naturally be good at something. They should just naturally get it, and if they don't, again, they can see themselves as a failure. And I think this one particularly shows up, I find, in the clinic room with people who have been naturally good or naturally seen as naturally very clever or intelligent at school. Maybe they went to a small school and they were gifted, or they were the best in the class. So that's the expectation they have. And then their world broadens when they go to secondary school, or when they go to university, or they go into the workplace, and there's more people around them who are equally as competent, and then it's suddenly like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, because you're looking at other people and judging yourself based on other people. So that's another form of imposter syndrome that can kick in. If I don't naturally have it, if I'm not naturally intelligent or skilled in an area, I'm a fraud. I'm not great. And then we have the final one, which is the super person. And this is someone who thinks that they have to be the best the highest achiever. Their work has to be of the best gold standard in order for them to feel worthy. And if their work isn't, or they are not seen as the best, again, they can feel like a fraud. So those are the 5 subtypes of imposter syndrome. And I think what is really evident with this individual is that there are things that, I guess there is the perfectionism, there is the fear of what people will say, which is preventing her from starting in the first place. But then also there may be the, okay, yes, I am creative and yes, I have all these ideas, but can I do it? Can I be a beginner? Can I start at the bottom and work my way up? Or will others, or will I deem myself to be an imposter because I'm not yet at the top and I've not yet made a success of myself?
But I think also what's driving all of that is fear.
Of course.
Like, that's the emotion behind it. It's fear. And I'd be really wanting to understand her relationship to fear growing up. How was she taught about fear? How was she taught to overcome it? What were the, safety mechanisms in place for emotional fear?
Yeah. Because what are you thinking? Are you thinking that fear feels overwhelming for her, or that she wants to run from fear?
I think it's paralyzing her. I think she's in a paralysis state. Like, she just doesn't even want to walk.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I say she's got these ideas, but she doesn't want to walk forward. And she's so afraid of walking forward. Like, she hasn't got the capacity to hold herself, to be like, yeah, this is scary, this is new. And mum and dad might not like it. Your friends might think, oh, what are you doing this for? She's getting a bit of a condescending attitude, actually, from people. Or she's worried, about this condescending attitude. But there's that capacity there. There's not that capacity there, rather, of her saying, okay, these people can say all of this, and it is going to be scary, but I've got you. I can hold you. Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Yeah.
And, I think teaching somebody about fear is such an important thing to do, or teaching a child about fear is such an important thing to do. Like, rather than, I think sometimes people get this wrong idea that we're meant to shelter them from things, like we're meant to shelter them from mistakes, we're meant to shelter them from fear, we're meant to protect them. And I don't think that actually is very protective. When I think about protecting my children, I want to protect them in a way where I can teach them to hold their own emotions over time. Like, that's how I see them protecting themselves in the world. And one of the most wonderful books that I've read with my son, which talks about emotions, and we have this concept now to do with fear. So in this book, it says, like, when somebody is scared, they go into a forest, and the forest is dark and it's scary, and da 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 da, and then blah blah blah, they get through the forest because they held hands and they walked through the forest. So now every time my son says to me, oh, I can't do that, mummy, and I will be like, oh, why do you think you can't do it? And he might say, oh, I'm feeling a bit scared. So I use this concept with him as well. So if he's feeling a bit scared, or if he's saying to me, mummy, I'm feeling, or I don't want to do that, I'm too scared, I don't think I can do it, I can't do it, mummy, then I'll often say to him, okay, hold my hand, what do we do? And he says, we walk through the forest together.
That's so cute.
So it's really teaching him this concept that your fear doesn't have to hold you back. You just need to find a way of holding that fear and walking through it. Like,
I love that.
Just because you fear something, that's not a reason to not do it.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Yes.
Feel the fear and
Feel
do
the
it
fear.
anyway. I mean, on a personal note, I feel like I have adapted this, what's the word for it? Theology? Yeah. That if someone asks me to do something, or if I'm given an opportunity and it feels scary, I'm going to do it. I'll say yes without even thinking about whether I can do it or not. I'll worry about that afterwards. But I say, if I'm feeling fear, I'm going to move forward in the direction of my discomfort, and then work everything else out afterwards.
Let me ask you something. How do you worry about it? How do you work it out?
Practically. practically. I turn it into a problem-solving mission. And I think about things logically whilst also soothing myself physically. So whether that is deep breathing, whether that is meditation, whether that is listening to music, whether that is talking to friends that get it, or family members that I know are really going to be supportive of me. And then I practically think about, let me break these steps down. And actually, maybe it won't be so scary if I have some kind of oversight and I've already thought through how it could possibly look. Because sometimes the fear is the unknown.
Yeah.
Not knowing what something is going to look like, how it's going to feel.
And that's a really normal fear.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to normalize that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not necessarily meant to feel like, yeah, this feels great.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to feel scared.
Yeah. Particularly if it is something that is important to you, something that is really challenging, it is new.
And you value it.
And you value it. Yeah. Fear is normal in that sense. So what would we say to this lady?
I think what I would say to her is kind of like, and that's why I asked you that question, what do you need? Let's start with that.
Yeah.
What do you need from these people around you? And what do you need from yourself? How do you get that need met within you? Who are the people you're going to pick to help you with this? You already know what your passion is, so that's great. We figured that bit out, or you figured that bit out already. That's fantastic. Now, how are you going to walk through that forest?
Yeah.
Who's going to hold your hand through it? Not everyone's going to agree with it, and that's fine. You know, you're not living up to other people's ideas of success. You're the adult.
Yeah.
You choose what that looks like for you.
Yeah. And I would just quickly add on that try and separate who you are from what you do. Because that is a huge thing with imposter syndrome, focusing and majoring heavily on the outcomes of success. And in that we forget who we are, or we think who we are is fused with what we do. But actually they're very separate things. Who you are enables you to do what you do. So maybe even put down a list, ask people that you trust to say positive things. Ask yourself, what are some of the things that I like about myself? You have a very strong inner critic and you're listening to that voice a lot. But maybe let's make it very intentional for you to be thinking about the positive aspects of who you are. Like someone who's creative, maybe someone who is daring, someone who's compassionate, loud, colourful, whatever that may be, and you can ask other people to contribute to, and then mentally rehearse that, or verbally even say it out loud to yourself.
I would go that step further. I would say to her, get yourself a journal every morning. Wake up and write down 3 things. 3 things that you are going to love yourself for, not criticize yourself, or love yourself for. Read it before bed. Do it again the next day. Do it again the next day. Like, keep building up that pathway. You have to make that voice louder, and you make it louder by focusing on it and by repetition. That's it. You believe the negative things because you've heard them so many times and you've repeated them so many times. And the same can be true of the positive things. But we're not repeating it enough. And I guess the other thing I just want to say, coming back to this idea of, her success and being an imposter, from what I have seen anyway, from in my own clinic and my own experience of it as a professional, imposter syndrome does not discriminate. So whether you're a graduate, whether you're the CEO, I've worked with people totally across that whole spectrum. I've seen it in all of them. And so sometimes we think, but when I get to that place, when I'm that top gardener, when I'm in Home and Garden, or Architectural Digest, whatever it may be, all these worries and everything will have gone. But it's coming back to what you're saying, the career and who you are. It's a separate. They don't link in that same way. It's not going to fill you up until you start dismantling those beliefs that you've created. I hope that answers that question. Yeah, I hope so too.